All right, there we go. All right, I can't like they can ban people from chat. I'll make you one as well. I trust you with those powers. Okay. I may as well just start doing the test now. I can't like I'm not gonna wait for a lot of people to join because I don't think a lot of people will join. But yeah, what is everyone's thoughts on this news that's on this live right now? There's like 4 people on it. I think this is just, I've already said it, but I think this is the most predictable defection alongside Robert Jenrick. It's nothing special. It's not going to bring any new talent to the Reform UK roster. So that's what I'm saying. Tories joining Reform is going to be its downfall because Reform voters don't want more Tories. Like you can see it from the party perspective. They want more experience. They want to seem more legitimate and electable, but I don't think people are buying it. People are going to be mad Nigel's accepting that people let them down for 14 years. Exactly, because he's claimed this whole time, he's sold Reform as a party that's going to do things differently. And that's not going to continue the status quo and whatever nonsense he says. But he himself has hired a bunch of establishment Tories. So I don't know what to say. This year only, 2026, we've got Nadhim Zahawi, Robert Jenrick, and Ursula Bradman. And there was another MP who I don't know his name. But anyways, let's start doing the test because that's why I went live. I'm going to go slowly. Oh, wait, let me not go in full screen because then I can't see the chat. Actually, I can just look at the chat on my phone. All right. I'm going to go relatively slowly so I can read what people are saying if people want to say anything to these questions. All right. Cool. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Well, I do think economic globalization is inevitable. Maybe not necessarily inevitable, but I think it's desirable. You do want to cooperate with people on this planet, don't you? If you've got the means to, which we do have now. It should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. That's pretty much asking it should serve people, it should improve regular people's lives rather than profits and macroeconomics and whatnot. So to that, I strongly agree. I don't think how you could not strongly agree to that. What's the point of globalization if it's only going to improve the lives of a select few exponentially and then also at the same time worsen the lives? I know that they're not mutually exclusive. Like you can improve people's lives whilst also increasing profits, but it should primarily serve humanity. That's what they've called it. I think I strongly agree with that. I kind of have to. I can't lie. Like you can't not strongly agree with that. I guess that you could put agree if you wanted to make the point that they can go hand in hand and profits are a large aspect in keeping these corporations afloat so that they can then innovate and improve the lives of people, but it should primarily serve humanity. And humanity, the environment, things of that nature should never be compromised in order to increase profits. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. Well, let me think of a case where this has happened. So obviously I'm British. I've lived in Britain all my life. Would I support my country if it was doing what America's doing, for example? No, I wouldn't. Does it mean support the country in the sense that, you advocate for it or that you wish it well? I would never wish on this country's downfall. But if this country is wrong in what it's doing, I genuinely believe that it's wrong in what it's doing, and what it's doing is harmful to people, I can't support that. I'll go disagree because I'll always support my country to be better than it is, but yeah, I can't agree when it's wrong. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Well, I agree with the first half of this question. So no one chooses their country of birth. That is true. There's not a survey where, I don't know, God or whatever gives to pre-born fetuses or whatever asking them where they'd like to be born. But do I agree with this? It's foolish to be proud of it. I think it's not foolish to be proud of it because you can take it with an ounce of luck and accept that you are lucky for example, being born in a developed nation with strong quality of life, strong economy. But then on the other hand, you can also be proud of its culture, of the people you've met in this country, the way it's taken you in, the way it's treated you. So I'll go disagree. I don't think it's foolish. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. No, not at all. Like this is the thing. This is the thing with the political compass test. Yeah, the people who get top right square, like the blue square, the right authoritarian, they only get there because they answer agree to shit like this, or they don't put strongly agree. I don't see how you can read this and not go strongly agree. I mean, strongly disagree. Sorry. So that is genuine. I feel like people who land in the blue square are genuinely forcing it, because this test, if you just answer it humanely, like I've done twice before, you do just get left libertarian. You do. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I strongly disagree with that point. The enemy of my enemy is my friends. Yeah, they must be rage baiting. The enemy of my enemy is my friends. Again, let me think of a real life example of this. So, in the UK, well, there's a good example of this in World War II. The UK, I guess you could say the UK teamed up with the Soviet Union to defeat Germany, but they're not necessarily, they weren't friends, but they had a common enemy. So I guess in that sense, relationships of convenience can be useful because you can achieve a common goal and set your differences aside whilst you're in that pursuit of that goal. But would I go as far to say they're my friend? If the enemy of Iran is Israel, then is Israel my friend? That's a good point. If the enemy of Iran is Israel my friend? Yeah, I get what you mean. That's a good point. Yeah, I don't think this is true for the most part. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I think it can be true in certain situations where you set your differences aside. However, I wouldn't go strongly agree because it's not constant. There are some cases where the enemy of your enemy should be equally as an enemy. You know what I mean? So if we've got two awful countries having a conflict, I don't think we should necessarily pick sides to defeat one, you know? But yeah, I think there are cases where relationships of convenience can be convenient. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. You can make a very good example of when this happened in the UK. Obviously, Iraq, 2003, was it? I mean, it did defy international law. I don't think it's controversial to say that. Was it justified? That's obviously a subjective question. I don't think you can really justify breaking international law in 99% of cases. I condemned USA doing it in Venezuela. I condemned Tony Blair doing it in Iraq. So I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I'm trying to just think of an example. If anyone watching can give me an example where military action that defies international law might be justified, let me know. Because there might be something. But I don't know. I don't think so. I'm gonna put strongly disagree for now. If anyone wants to try and come up with an idea that changes my mind, but I don't think I could agree with that either. Or if it's like an insurgent force against the regime, does that count as breaking international law? I'm not familiar with the term insurgent force. That might just be my lack of knowledge. But what do you mean by that? Insurgent force against the regime, does that count as breaking international law? So is that just trying to people went against ISIS in Syria? So within Syria, people who rebelled against ISIS. I don't know if that breaks international law though, because that's people within Syria, but they might be considered terrorists under international law. Yeah. Yeah, I guess freedom fighters can in some cases be called terrorists. Hmm. I think I'm gonna go strongly disagree still. I don't think that would be a question of breaking international law. You're right, Andre? Maybe the question is only asking about governments. I think so. I'm gonna take this as one government invading another government. Um, I don't think that's justified ever, to be honest. Hello, Ivan. There is now a worrying fusion of information entertainment. I mean, this is probably the clearest, strongly agree I think I could ever answer. GB News, what test am I taking? I'm taking the political compass test. So you know the ones that um are like you see a lot on TikTok where you've got the quadrant and you've got green left libertarian, you've got left authoritarian. That one. I've already done this twice. I haven't done it in a couple months. I'm just taking it again, seeing if my thoughts have changed at all. So yeah, but if any of you lot want to debate my points or chip in with any questions or whatever, then I accidentally went on GB News. Bro, my sister's texting me saying I need to be done by 2:30. I will be done by 2:30. Um, I accidentally went on GB News yesterday and they were playing the Soviet national anthem with an AI pic of Stalin as a Soviet general. This is what I mean, bro. GB News is not news. They're classified as an entertainment company. And that in itself is what? To avoid tax or something or to avoid regulation? Who knows? But the point is that they are not news. And there's a lot of people on social media, on on social media or in the media who pass off as reliable news. Look, for me, I might be guilty of this as well. I'm not I never claim to be news. I just speak my opinion on things that I read in the news. But there are a lot of people who pass off as being reliable sources of information when in reality they're just spitting nonsense. I don't really like how the compass is made. I like the categories. Or what you mean, like, what do you mean by the categories? Like the results you can get, whichever four you can land in. I think the quiz itself is not great. I might do another one on a different day. The 8 values one is pretty good. I've also done that one before. But that one's a little bit more in depth, I think, and it gives you a whole range of answers. This one I'm going to go strongly agree. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment, for sure. For sure. Okay. These are going to be questions on the economy. People ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Yeah, like the two divisions, authoritarian slash lib and conservative slash progressive. Yeah, it's quite simplistic. Like I said, the 8 values one gives you a bunch of different categories that are more nuanced, and then it puts you on a spectrum there instead of just putting you on a dot and not really elaborating. I do see that point. Yeah, that is a good critique of this test. I mean, it's also just very easy to do and to look at. Genuine question, why are you against Starmer? I'm not against Starmer though. I'm very critical of him. I wouldn't want to overthrow him like some of these Russian, not Russian, but yeah, Russian pretty much propagandists and far right lunatics in this country want. Talking about Trump, come over here and free us from Keir Starmer's communist regime. Like that's nonsense. And that is treason. I'm not against Starmer in that sense. I do think he's a little bit too boring, uninspiring. Um, what other adjective can I use? I just don't think he's very. I think he's too pragmatic. He's not trying anything different. Although he is better than what the Tories were, I don't think he's done enough to move the Labour Party in a different direction and really create his own narrative. What, in your opinion, has Starmer done wrong? I think he's kind of slowed down on it now, but the whole immigration rhetoric was awful. And I think that came in accordance with his dip and decline in popularity and approval ratings. And I don't think that was a coincidence. I did not like that. I think he was trying to gain support from reform, but he was never going to gain that support by just parroting the same talking points. But policy-wise, what they're not like, I mean, the budgets have been, like I said, uninspiring. They lack a message. They lack a clear distinction to the previous ones. Though they're still better, obviously, you have some good stuff in there. And I think some has done some good things. The Employment Rights Bill, the what was the one about the bill that made it illegal for landlords to raise the price, whatever, that one was good. His progress economy wise has been the best out of the last 10 PMs, but that's not hard though. 10 PMs? What's that? Your Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, Boris, May, Cameron. Not out of the last 10 PMs, bro. I don't think that's right. You can't say Tony Blair and Gordon. Well, Gordon Brown had the crash, but Tony Blair for sure had better economic progress than Starmer. For sure. Check the statistic. But what statistic though? What do you mean by progress economy-wise? Because growth as a percentage per year has not been larger under Starmer than it was under Blair or even Cameron, I don't think. And yes, a lot of that is because of the Tories and what they did. But look, Starmer's not been perfect. I don't think it's controversial to say that, but I'm not sitting here blaming all the problems on Starmer. I'm not going to sit here telling you that we should have a general election. I would honestly, I'm one of the people as well who would rather see him stay as Prime Minister than have a leadership contest at Labour. I think he's stable, and that's kind of what we need right now. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. Yeah, strongly agree. I think inherently as humans, there's not much difference between us if we're from different nations, maybe cultures. But class is really where we are positioned on the hierarchy and how we're treated. Starmer is the best option out of all the other candidates, even though he himself isn't that good. You could make an argument for that. You would disagree with this. Why would you disagree with this? You think that people are divided more by nationality than by class? I don't see how that could be possible. Nationality is more important, but that's subjective though. I mean, I guess all of these questions are kind of subjective, but you could say nationality is more important, but doesn't mean people are more divided. I saw that about Suella Braverman. I was talking about it on this live earlier. It's predictable, isn't it? It's not a shock, but it's not going to do them any good. Around the world, there are more conflicts over nationality. Yeah, sure. But I think internally within a society, there are more conflicts due to class than there are by nationality. So you can look at it on a macro global scale. And yes, because we have different borders, we're going to fight different countries. And that obviously you can make a link to nationality. But within this system, especially in a capitalist system, in developed countries, which is what I'm most educated on, I see people being driven to crime, being driven to inequality and division within society due to class. And I think that the media and politicians, to try and distract people from that fact, have been pushing narratives that force people to see people from other nations as different, when in reality they're not that different, because they're all in the same class, so they get treated the same by society. But if they get forced against each other, they'll never cooperate. You could say people from similar nationalities are more likely to help each other compared to class. I don't think that's true though. I think sure, there could be an example of that. However, I would not pick somebody because they have the same nationality as me. You know, I don't think that's really true for most people. So yeah, I strongly agree with this. I think people are more divided by class than by nationality. I genuinely agree with that. Yeah, I'm glad you do too. I can see the argument that you were making about nationalities, but no. Communities of different nationalities are more tight-knit and stronger than community of class. Yeah, but bro, I'm saying that this isn't because they're actually more divided by class. Sorry, they're actually more divided by nationality than by class. It's because the media's conditioned them to believe that if they stay together as a nationality, that's what really matters. When in reality, you can achieve more change by cooperating as a class, because classes inherently are more divided in society. So if you force them together, or if you actually start cooperating together, you can achieve more bottom up. These are regional groups too. They will also be likely of a single class. Yeah. Yeah, I think you've got more in common with, if you're a white male, you've got more in common with a with a black woman living next to you than you've got with a white man from the same nationality as you who owns, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg, who owns Facebook. There's no way you look at Mark Zuckerberg and think that you've got more in common with him if you're an American than you do with an immigrant co-worker. Way before media, people were closer due to nationality. Wait, what do you mean? Because before the media, you had. What do you mean before the media? The media is not necessarily a new thing. You've had the media for a long time, and the media now divides people by nationality more than class, so people don't unite as a class. But that's only because now they've got that excuse. Before there were different scapegoats than different nationalities, but now because we've had more immigration and more integration in society of different cultures, that's an easier point for the media to attack. Also, class is a less significant factor in the olden days. Nationality was much more important. You keep saying important and significant, but for what? I'm talking about division in society and how people actually live. Like I'm saying, people are divided more by class. For example, the upper classes, it doesn't matter their race, they live completely different lives to you. And like I said, your immigrant co-worker who's not from the same country as you. So you're not divided by nationality. It's just that's what external forces tell you that you're divided by. But it's skin pigmentation, it might be accent, but that's nothing to do with how you live your life, how you go about your day, what job you have, what I don't know how many taxes you pay. Like people from different nationalities but similar classes aren't going to be as close. But I'm saying that this isn't. See, the point you're making is not necessarily wrong. There could definitely be cases of this, but I'm saying that that's not necessarily reality. It's just because people have been told that they're different depending on nationalities. Hence, they act more differently to other nationalities than to their own. But their life, I'm saying their life, if you look at it objectively, their life is more similar to people within the same class and more different to people in different classes. I don't know if you're misunderstanding the question. Your opinion's valid. Like I'm not here to shame other people's opinions. It's a good conversation. I'm quite strong in my belief of this. But I don't know, if I could put the question in a different sense, I think I'd ask you, like I think I've already said this, but I'd ask you, is your life more similar to a classmate or a co-worker of a different nationality to you than it is to somebody of the same nationality of an upper class? So that division there is the division between you and Elon Musk. I know Elon Musk not probably the same nationality, but just Nick Candy, whoever it may be. Is your life more different to his or to your black or brown classmate or co-worker? And I think you're definitely closer to the person who you live in harmony with, close to. So you're definitely divided more by the person who's above you. To Elon Musk, obviously. So are you saying you are obviously further away from Elon Musk than you are to your immigrant mate? Is that what you're saying? Because then you'd agree with me, I think. Yeah, yeah. So that is how I've interpreted the question. Are you closer to people of the same nationality who are way above you in the social ladder? Are you closer to them than you are to your immigrant mates? Because one thing's nationality but on the same class, and the other thing's nationality, same nationality but different class. I think same nationality and different class is a way bigger divide than different nationality, same class. So people are divided more by class than by nationality. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Well, if you have low inflation but high unemployment, you don't have people who are gaining a wage to actually spend and actually see the rewards of low inflation. So I think you should control unemployment first and then try and control inflation. Controlling inflation is more important. So I think I'll disagree. How about looking at it politically? People from different classes can all come together to agree on something. They can, but it doesn't happen often. I've never seen it where Elon Musk, for example, has got the working class on his side. I mean, they are on his side, but to actually achieve a goal that benefits the working class and the masses, I've never seen a billionaire, or a corporate CEO do that. I have seen people within the same class unite against the upper classes, but I haven't seen somebody from up here come down to join the ones down here. For example, the UK people from different classes all don't like the government. Yeah, that's a shared. I mean, that's kind of a generalization, but yeah, the government is very unpopular. But that doesn't. But look, what I'm saying, what my point is as well, that class people from different nationalities can also come together and agree on many things. Yeah. So also, I think what you're saying about class divisiveness in political views, that is not necessarily because it's true that all classes are being affected the same by the government. It's just that the media, the powerful people in society will try and convince you that this government is bad and this and that and this and that for reasons such as immigration, for reasons such as differing nationalities, rather than it being class inequality, which the rich and powerful society are responsible for. It's much less likely that people of similar classes, in my opinion. But this is the thing, you're saying things like likely and probability. This isn't about probability, it's just about reality. We could have a false sense of reality, So it might be more likely that people within similar classes, what were you saying? Similar classes are united on things than it is of different nationalities in certain cases. But that doesn't necessarily mean, you know what I mean? You got it. Appreciate it. Thank you. It's not, though, name something that we disagree on politics-wise due to nationality. Yeah, that's that again. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulations. Strongly agree. Again, like people who land on the right side of the spectrum genuinely answer strongly disagree for this. Like, bro, this is why I don't get libertarians, man, and anarcho-capitalists. Like, you hate the government, but you just want to shift all the responsibility to profit-hungry corporations who are just going to cut costs without any regulations and bend everyone else over. That is literally what would happen. Of course, they require regulation. People are saying different nationalities can't integrate together in the UK. Yeah, people are saying that, but that's not true. People can obviously integrate. They aren't taken into class as well. It's a very interesting debate and conversation. I'm going to try and move on, but I will still respond to what you lot are saying. But it's good that you lot are having a discussion in the chat about it. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. This is that one. This is Marxism, isn't it? It's fundamentally a good idea. So what does this actually mean? This means that people give what they can to society and they take what they need from society. That's what that means, right? Also, so everybody in society gives the best they can and they take everything they need equally. I mean, I'm not a communist, but I mean, fundamentally, maybe not in practice, but fundamentally, is it a good idea? I think if we strive for a society like that, then sure, I'm not going to go strongly agree, but I'll go agree. Yeah, it's a fundamentally good idea. Even geographically, most conflicts and negative things are based on nationality rather than class. Bro, we've already been through this. We've already been through this. You don't have to be a communist to agree with that statement. You can argue socialism. Yeah, exactly. You can strive for society with that slogan and ideology in mind without having a communist society. The free of the market, the free of the people. This might be my favorite question on the whole test. This might be my favorite question. The free of the market, the free of the people. Strongly disagree. Actually, you know what? It gets to a point, It gets to a point where the free of the market, the less free of the people. I think there could also be a perfect point in the middle where a free market does give people more liberties. I might not go strongly disagree. I might go disagree. But if we're talking about a complete free government, a free market in an anarcho-capitalist sense, no, not at all. Because people, obviously, no welfare, there's no safety net. People are quite literally slaves to their employment. whilst yes, they're getting paid money, there's no minimum wage. So what are they going to be paid one day, the other? Who knows? Because it's all in the hands of these rich, wealthy ruling classes. So yeah, people are pretty much just slaves working for money that may as well be worth absolutely nothing. And if their company goes bust, or if they want to get sacked, if they are sacked, there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can fall back on. They just need to find another job. So it's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. Yeah, I think it is. I think it is a sad reflection that water is now something that's commodified, or something that different companies compete for. Like, that's the whole thing about capitalism, isn't it? You compete for the best product for the consumers. What do you mean by freer market? By free the market, which way would you interpret it? So a freer market just means less regulation, less government intervention, less corporate tax, just literally the government not getting involved with businesses and allowing the markets to almost regulate themselves and operate by themselves. So if a business fails, that's on them, they failed. If a business wants to do whatever it wants to get profits and to achieve a certain goal, they should do that. That's what a freer market is. So less government intervention, pretty much. I strongly agree with this, because I think with capitalism, yeah, you can have more competition to see who can give me the best burger because it tastes differently. But with water, it's just something you actually need to live. Like, you need it. Surely that would mean freer people. It would mean freer people who own the businesses, but is that the people? Is that the majority of society? Because remember, for businesses to operate, 99% of the population has to work for those businesses. And if 99% of the population are working for businesses without having a government involved to regulate those businesses and to have a minimum wage in there and to have a safety net, these people are practically slaves, and the employers can do whatever they want to them, because the worker cannot just leave, cannot just demand better working conditions, because that's not what happens in the freest of markets. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. I don't know if I agree with this. I don't think I do agree with this. I think it is it. I mean, people need houses, and I think people should be allowed to buy and sell houses. I don't agree with it as being a commodity in the sense of like Pokemon cards, where you try and get as many as you can and whatever, and hoard them. Land isn't houses, in your opinion. That's interesting. I've never heard that take before. So what do you think land is? Like space, like physical, like green farms, pretty much. Do you not think? So would you also say that businesses and shops and stores, is that not land either? Land isn't houses. See, if lands aren't houses, then that's a different question. I've always answered this question considering land to include houses. Land would be farms and stuff, in my opinion. I slightly agree with that statement. If it was just farms and things of that nature, I still don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, though, with it being bought and sold. Although I think I'm still gonna go slightly disagree. I don't think, like I said, I hate seeing people bulk buy houses. Not people, obviously, corporations and bankers buy houses on bulk, because that, again, is not sustainable and it's not beneficial to the average person. Land can be anything you own. Yeah, land. I get that's how I'm interpreting it. Land can be anything that you own, but not just like a toy or like a phone. That's not land. Land is obviously space that you own and nobody else is entitled to unless you allow them. I think everyone should be able to own a home and a business, but I'd argue houses probably isn't land. That's fair. If that's how you see the question, that's fair. If they work their way to get to the position to buy multiple houses, why is that a bad thing? Because I'm not talking about individuals who work hard in life and, I don't know, put their money in the right places. I'm talking about bankers, rich bankers who cheat the system, and companies like BlackRock who pretty much know or have the funds to know when governments are going to, or when economies are going to crash and when they're going to rise again, and housing prices. So, for example, after the 2008 economic crash, when the housing market completely collapsed, these bankers in Wall Street and whatever started buying houses on bulk when mortgage rates were completely shattered and very low. So then now, when they started rising again due to interest and just inflation, they could then sell them for massive profits. So it's not about working your way to get into to buy a house, because that's obviously the American dream, the British dream, whatever you want to call it, the capitalist dream, to buy your house. That I'm for an individual to buy a house. But in this world we live in, individuals cannot buy houses because they're being priced out of the market by corporations and by bankers. We have a homelessness problem. Yeah, we have a homelessness problem, and a large part of that, I'm not going to say the biggest or the least biggest part, because I don't know really, I'm not like very well versed on homelessness and its effects, but the reasons why a lot of people aren't buying houses and they're renting them instead, and they're never going to be able to buy a house, is because the housing market is so inflated because of what I just said. Because corporations are buying houses in bulk and just allowing that to be almost like a stock that just rises and appreciates in value. But then again, regular people cannot buy that, cannot afford, and they never will be able to afford that. Our generation is never going to be able to afford a home unless we work like our tits off and we get high salaries, above average salaries, we get bonuses, we get promotions. It's not like the last few generations where you could just buy a house by working a working class job, in your 30s. That's not how it works anymore, unfortunately. Here's the fault of businesses. Landlords shouldn't be able to charge insane amounts of rent. Yeah, I mean, that's a different point, because this is talking about buying a house. You're talking about renting, but I do agree with you. I do agree exactly what you're saying about landlords. Houses used to be super cheap, not anymore because of capitalism. Exactly. That's why, and I wouldn't necessarily just say capitalism. I'll go as far to say free market capitalism, because capitalism, if you restrict people from just buying houses on a bulk, like, not people. Again, I keep saying people, but I mean corporations and big businesses and bankers. They shouldn't just be allowed to buy a whole neighborhood, a whole block of flats. Like, that's not how it should work. So yes, you're right about capitalism. That's why there are government policies for easier access to young people to buy homes. That's why there's government policies for easier access to young people. Yeah, but those policies aren't working though. If you look at the numbers on how housing prices are rising according to inflation. Well, people rent houses to save up to buy one. Landlords charge insane amounts, so people can't afford to buy a house. Exactly, because if you can't afford to buy a house, you're gonna have to rent. But if your rent is so high, when are you ever going to be able to escape that and actually just buy a house with your own money? Because you're already spending so much of your paycheck on a rent. Exactly. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to society. That question is so relevant to what we've been talking about. Because there's people, obviously this is in a much broader sense, but there's people after the crash who bought a bunch of houses when they were cheap and then just used them as stocks that increased in value naturally because of inflation. And when economies recovered, so did the housing market. And then they could sell them for massive profits to regular people. And that is regrettable. I don't think people should make a fortune by not working and just letting their property and value, and stocks and assets appreciate in value. Strongly agree. I don't think people should not be allowed to own more than one property. I don't think businesses should be allowed to just buy a bunch of houses. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Agree, sometimes, yes. Sometimes it might be necessary if you want to protect a certain industry. But I'm getting messages from a friend. I'm reading the chat right now. If you want to message me on the live or text on the live a question or something, feel free to. I'll read your messages after though. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver profits to its shareholders. Like this, if you read, like at first you read this and you say, okay, I might agree, but listen to what this question is saying and listen to how it's worded. The only social responsibility. So not only do they say social, not economic, they say social responsibility, and then they add the word only. How could you agree with that? Somebody answer me. How could anybody agree with that? The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Strongly disagree. Strongly disagree. The only social responsibility of a company should not be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. No. The rich are too highly taxed. Strongly disagree. I mean, the thing is, by rich, when in this question and in these tests, I never know if they mean people who are just on above average salaries, or if they mean billionaires, multi-millionaires, CEOs. So if it's just talking about people on 100K a year, I don't think they're too highly taxed. I don't. But the wealthy, like the ultra wealthy, yes, they're not. I mean, no, they're not too highly taxed. No. And then people will say, well, we've got some of the highest tax rates on the wealthy now and stuff. And then I say to you, well, why do you think that is? Why do you think we tax the rich higher now than we did 100 years ago? Because their wealth has quadrupled, quintupled, sextupled, septupled, octupled, and so on since then. So no shit, they're going to be taxed slightly more, but they should be taxed more. And they still, like, their wealth would still grow exponentially even if you tax them more. It depends on how you interpret the rich. I think 100K a year is middle class in this economy. I agree with you. That is definitely middle class. It's still an above average salary. Yeah, I don't think 100K would be rich in this question. I think it's asking me probably maybe like 500K a year or more, to which I'd say no. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher medical standards of care, higher standards of medical care. What do you lot think about this one? Because obviously I'm left leaning, if you want to attach that onto me. So you think, well, obviously then you should treat everybody the same and everybody should have access to the same healthcare. Nobody should be able to get better healthcare than other people because of their status and wealth. But I think there's certain positive and function that wait, sorry, you lot can't see the question, can you? There is a function to having private healthcare available to people, because then you do lower waiting lists and you do really strain off of the NHS for people who need it and can't afford private. So I strongly agree. Actually, I'm going to go agree, because I think in an ideal society, if we're looking at it ideally, everybody should have access to the same standards, without that compromising the system. I slightly agree with that. I wish there was a middle option of no opinion. Yeah, that is the thing about this test. It doesn't let you sit on the fence. It forces you one way or another, which I think is good. I think it's good because I think in a lot of cases, people don't actually just sit on the fence. They just say that to cop out. I think people do generally lean more to one side or the other. Although it is frustrating sometimes. But I'd go agree. Government should penalize. Exactly, centrism is not real. It doesn't exist. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. You know what, actually, I'd be interested to see how you'd answer this test to genuinely get slap bang in the middle. Like, is there only one way to answer this test to get there, or are there different ways? I don't know. Should penalize business. I'll strongly agree. Again, how can you debate against this? Like, again, I've said it so many times on this live. People who land on the right side are because they disagree with shit like this. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Yes, they should. Yes, they should. I've had a few people get super close to the middle but never slap bang on. Yeah, I think the first time I did this, I was like maybe a couple squares diagonally off the middle onto left lib. And then the second time I did it, I was like in the center of left libertarian of that square. So, I don't know. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. Yes, because a free market, if it's actually going to be free and allow smaller businesses to grow and to innovate and to have a say in the certain sector or whatever you want to call it, you have to ensure that people can't just dictate the whole entire industry. Because then you get things like Amazon, who exploit labor laws in developing countries and build up massive factories there. Things that smaller businesses obviously don't have the access to, but also don't have the morals to do something like that. We can't just allow them to to rule over and then just have more power and exploit more for more profit. So I strongly agree. I'm 2 squares off the max left economically and 4 squares off the bottom on live. Yeah, fairs. Fair enough. Social values. Okay, I like these ones. Abortion when the woman's life is not threatened should always be illegal. Abortion when the woman's life is not threatened should be illegal. Strongly disagree. I mean, I don't even think the point of abortion is, or the main point of abortion is when the woman's life is threatened. I just think abortion is when you don't want a child now, and you have a child growing inside of you. I don't think it's good, or it would be good for women to use abortion as child prevention. Instead of using contraception on the male side or some kind of contraceptive pill. However, when people make that argument, I've argued anti-abortion for devil's advocate. I think you could make a devil's advocate argument. It's pretty easy to say, oh, it's a human life, you're killing it. But when people make this argument that abortion should be illegal because women just use it instead of contraception, instead of just using protection and being safe, I don't think that's true. There will be people who do that, but I don't think that's true. I don't know. I don't speak to many women about this, but I don't see why you would do that. You made it feminist somehow. I think the thing is with feminism, you could genuinely argue anything to be, you could be a feminist and argue to be pro-trans or anti-trans or pro-abortion, anti-abortion. It's one of those ideologies that, differs so much within itself. I started the speech with, I oppose abortion because I'm a feminist. Yeah, that definitely is something that would grab the audience's attention. You don't usually associate those two things together. All authority should be questioned. Yes, of course it should. Of course. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Women don't use for abortion for contraception. That's nothing. Yeah, exactly. It's a stupid argument. An eye for an eye, and even if they did use it for contraception, it's not necessarily a good thing. I don't think it should be illegal. Still, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It's just like, does that just mean if you punch me in the face, I'll punch you in the face? Is that what that means? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Disagree. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theatres or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. See, the thing is, conservatives and people on the right would answer, for the most part, I think, agree. Conservatives would say taxpayers should not be expected to prop up something that can't generate its own profit. But then they're the ones who would complain and cry about we're losing our culture. Look at all these soulless high streets. What happened to the theatre? What happened to going to museums with your family and stuff? Like, you said agree on that one too. Agree to what? This one or this one? Taxpayers should not be expected. Yeah, I disagree with this. I think taxpayers should be expected to prop up any theatres or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis, because taxpayers, whether they know it or not, most of them do enjoy going to museums, going to theatres. And that is British culture. If you're pro-British culture, you would be pro-propping up and helping and supporting these businesses. Do you mean you disagree with that, or you agree? Do you agree with me, or museums should be propped up and not theatres? Fair, that's interesting. Why is that? Why do you value museums more than theatres? By theatres, I don't think it means like cinemas. I think it means like traditional going to watch like a musical or a play or something like that. But I guess you could make an argument. Museums are, I can see why you prioritize them, because they are very good. They can educate. There you go. I think museums are educational, and as much as I adore plays, I just don't think it's necessary. That is a good argument. I can see that. Yeah, I would go disagree. I wouldn't go strongly disagree, but I would go disagree. And that's fair. Tax should be prioritized towards NHS. Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that at all. The things with theatres as well. I definitely don't think that it should be the priority, of course. But right now with Netflix and streaming, YouTube or whatever, people just don't go to theatres anymore, so they will naturally die out. And I guess you could just say that's progression, that's societal change, but it's sad. It's sad, and I guess maybe part of me is like not wanting to let that go because that was part of my childhood. I used to go to London a lot every half term and watch like a play with my parents. But I don't know. I guess that is just part of life. I performed in theatre. I adore theatre. I wish more people did go. Yeah, it's sad. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Schools should not. Disagree. Yeah, it should be compulsory to go to school. Let's be real. That's one of the easier questions. I can't lie. I think people who agree with this, like, I don't know what you're trying to achieve. Why would it be more beneficial for somebody to just stay at home or whenever they choose? Because it's a slippery slope. If you don't make it compulsory, people might start going at the start of term, miss one day, then like, you know what? I'm not getting punished for this. Miss another one, miss another one, miss another one, and then they're finished. I don't think school necessarily is the best institution. I think it needs reform, but it doesn't need reform, but it needs reform. But it's still a better place for children to go to than to just be home alone when their parents are at work doing nothing. That's like, yeah, I don't see why that would be more beneficial. Okay, all people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. I mean, there should be mandatory at-home education for disabled or mentally ill people at home, maybe. Is there not mandatory education at home? I think there is. With anxiety or accessibility issues. But I mean, I guess you could just, I mean, it is illegal to just have home education, to be homeschooled. That's a parental choice. I think that still counts as attendance, though, in my opinion. All people have their rights, but it's better for all of us. Yeah, get out of it. Why is it better? I never hear an argument as to why it's actually better. Like, how would that improve my life? A lot of students are forced to go into school with anxiety and stuff. Yeah, I think children with anxiety should have more support. Yeah, for sure. People can't afford to get homeschooled. Yeah, there should. Maybe that's a good thing. That's a good idea. State-funded homeschooling. That'd probably be very expensive, but it's something to consider. Yeah, I never really thought about it like that before. But yeah, on this question, like, I never hear a good argument as to why race mixing is bad. I mean, sorry, as to why it's bad. Why is it bad? Why would my life be better if I go with somebody with the exact same ethnic code as me? I think we should up taxes a lot and reform the tax bands. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if we agree exactly on how we do it and what and how much we'd increase it by, but I do agree. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. I watched Charlie Kirk do this test for Turning Point UK. It was like 5 years ago, and I watched it recently. He put agree or strongly agree on this. Like, brother, I'm not gonna say his children dodged a bullet. That's horrible. That is horrible. But come on, man. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. All right, bro. I wish there was a middle option. Well, for this one, what you'd want to spank your children? Do you think? I don't see what that does. Like, even shouting at them does cause like internal trauma. I don't agree with shouting at a child in most cases either. Some cases fine, but I think talking to them normally is better. Some kids need a slap, bro. The thing is, I can agree with you that some kids sometimes need a slap, but do they really? Maybe in the moment, but in the long run, is that really going to improve their life? They might be scared of you, but then that also means that whilst they don't misbehave as much, they might also not be themselves and develop properly, and then they might carry that trauma on. I don't know. I'd never put my hands on my children. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Yeah, strongly agree. It doesn't improve things, no, but sometimes I just really want to slap some kids. They're lucky there's only like one person watching this live right now. But my siblings get slapped from me trust. Fair enough. I'm not going to judge you for what you do in your life. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offence. I definitely agree. I don't know how strong my agreement is. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be criminal offence. It should definitely be legalized. for social reasons and for economic reasons, because you can tax it. I got strongly agree. I don't think it's good, but my dad stole a car and his dad smacked him. My dad stole a car. What does that mean? And his dad smacked him. Who stole a car? I haven't completely understood that. But if somebody stole a car, maybe a slap is warranted. But I don't think at that point a slap would even help them. I think they're a lost cause. How are you stealing someone's car? That's jail, bro. My dad stole a car from my granddad smacked him for it. That is called for. That is called for. For sure. But I think it's also called for jail. I think obviously I'm joking, it's family stuff, but yeah, that's mad. That's mad. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. See, this question, every time I answer this question, I interpret it in the sense that the prime function of schooling should be equip the future generation to have the best possible life within this current system. We currently live in a system where if you don't have a job, you're cooked. You're cooked societally and economically. People will look down on you, but economically you'll be finished. So yes, schools should ensure that children go on to have successful lives in the system we live in. I don't agree exactly with the system we live in, where everything's determined on what job you have and what education you had that led you to that job. But I agree that schools should ensure that children have a future in this world. He stole it from a showroom, so it's low-key woke. How old was he when he did that? Was your granddad like 80 and your dad like 50? Or was it like when your dad was younger? That would add some good context. Your dad was 16. Yeah. That's about the age that I would have assumed. I keep covering the questions that I'm on. I'm sorry, I forget, because my face doesn't show up on the screen. When I look at my phone, I see my face is all over it. People with serious inheritable diseases should not be allowed to reproduce. I hate this question so much, bro. Because obviously I disagree. I disagree with this. They should be allowed to reproduce. But then again, like, you do say, oh, you are given a future being a setback or a higher chance of having a setback. And it says serious inheritable disabilities. Serious. See, I don't even know what cystic fibrosis is, but that sounds mental. I'm going to go disagree. But if I had a serious inheritable disability, I don't think I'd have kids. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think I would. Maybe adopt. But I don't think I can't do that to somebody. Hereditary lung condition lifespan like 2030. And like, that's inheritable as well, right? So you can kind of, well, you can see your genes and your genetic whatever, and you can tell whether your child's gonna have that. See, like, if I knew that, because not only are you putting your child through future pain, you also put yourself through pain, because your child will just die before you. No, I wouldn't do that. But I don't think that should stop somebody from doing it. I'm gonna go disagree. If your parent has it, you have 50% chance of having it. That's dark. It's all God's plan, though. It's all God's plan. The most important thing I don't know why I said that. If there was more people in this live, I would not have said that. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. The most strongly disagree. It's not the most important thing. I think children should have discipline, but it should not be the most important thing. So I gotta disagree. God's plan. God's plan. There is no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. If more people were in this live, I wouldn't have said that. It's true. It's true. I think it's because I'm also doing this at 2 p.m. People probably at school because it's a Monday. I'm on study leave for my mocks. I've already finished them though, so I'm not stressing. But yeah, there are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. I don't necessarily. This might be one where I go in the middle. I'm not uni until next week. Fairs, bro. Uni to me just seems like it's gonna be just actual banter. Like, I swear, all the people that are mutuals with on this account that go uni, it's like half the time it's like Tuesday 12 like noon, and they're just viewing my stories or liking my stories. Like, bro, don't you have lectures or stuff to go to? 3 days a week, yeah, it just sounds sick. And I'm taking a gap year next year, so I'm gonna be there in 2 years. So I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm gonna miss it. I miss it before I even go there. But what course do you take? 5 lectures a week is mental. There are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. But the thing is, like, there are different cultures, but there are also savage and civilized people. So I disagree. But I don't think cultures. I think cultures could be what we consider to be savage, and there could be other cultures that we consider to be civilized. But people. Oh my days! My sister's actually crying that I've taken a charger. But the charger's not even here. The charger's downstairs. Let me message her real quick. The charger is in the living room. The charger's in the living room, by the way. The charger's in the living room. All right, she's very angry with me. Is what it is. Sociology and politics joint honors. That sounds good. What uni do you go to? It depends on what uni you go to. Yeah, 10 to 12 contact hours. University of Manchester. Fair enough. Fair enough. Those who are able to work and refuse opportunities should not expect society support. Strongly disagree. What? They should just die. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. Yes and no. I think if you are troubled by something, thinking about it can lead to positive change because you might act on it. You might try and improve it. I met someone who said strongly agree. Yeah, like, this is what I mean. People who are on the right on the spectrum, they answer agree to shit like that. When you're troubled, it's better not to think about it. I disagree. I think you should confront your problems instead of just ignore them. But you should, obviously, I don't strongly disagree because you should also keep your mind off of things that are stressing you out. You have no empathy. Yeah, just that's the thing. People are so different, and then they want to act like objective morality exists, but everybody believes different things, and people believe that objective morality are different things. So this is another thing with religion that I just don't get. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. Strongly disagree. I don't know why that took me so long to process. What's good for the most successful corporations always ultimately good for all of us? No. Well, I mean, it depends on what that corporation believes to be good. If a corporation believes that producing a cheap, affordable, useful, innovative product is good, then yes, that would also be good for all of us. I'm in the middle with the first generation immigrant question. First generation immigrants cannot be fully integrated within the new country. It's definitely difficult, but to say they can never be. Like, the thing is, that's the thing. Like, I don't read this as being first generation immigrants can or can't be fully integrated within, and there's like a spectrum and stuff where maybe 50, if you go in the middle, you say some might, some not. I genuinely just see this as they say never. So I strongly disagree that first generation immigrants can never be fully integrated. There's no way. But I guess maybe the question's phrased wrong. What's good for most? Yeah, this I disagree with, because I think most corporations, it's fair to say, are driven by profit, not by what is good for all of us, which is not necessarily the profit they get. but the actual value they bring to society. Yeah, I guess some can and some can't. That's why I'm in the middle of it. Yeah, see, that's I didn't read the question like that, but that's fine. I agree with you on that. Some can and some can't. Or I don't think it's about some can and some can't. It's that some will and some won't. But yeah, Fez. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content is, should receive public funding. I strongly disagree. I think it's good to have a public broadcasting service that people fund, because you at least know it's not going to be totally biased depending on who owns it. Because most of these media companies nowadays are so biased, bro. It's like they've lost all objective sense of reality, and whatever matches their narrative is they'd go for. This is why I get criticizing the BBC. The BBC can definitely be criticized, but people want to abolish it or privatize it or just get rid of it. No, I think having a public broadcasting service is good. It's more difficult for certain cultures to successfully integrate due to racism, for sure. Plus, like, for example, Chinese immigrants are more likely to be able to integrate. Yeah, I agree. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. I'm going to start going faster because I got to finish this in half an hour, or my sister's going to crash out. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. So like digital ID and stuff like that. I don't think so. I don't see my life getting less free. I honestly think if you're a good person, I'll go disagree. But I think if you're just a law-abiding, decent person, I don't think you've got to worry about the government. I guess you have to worry about other people potentially hacking government information and then finding your information on there. But I don't think that's true. I think larger immigrant populations have better support networks and can integrate better. I read that question and took it in the control orders TPIM's way. What's the control orders TPIM's way? I don't know what that is. And which question are you referencing to? This one. Tony Blair's control orders. I actually don't know what that was. Was that like the whole digital ID thing? I don't know. I didn't do A-level politics. So I'm not aware. There will be policies that I'm not aware of. But I'd appreciate if you told me what that is, because that'd be good to be educated on. But he was a big advocate for counterterrorism, for surveillance, unlawfully holding people on suspicion of terrorist acts, even if they haven't done it. You're gonna have to elaborate on what unlawfully means there. What do you mean by unlawfully? Because you can hold somebody on suspicion of something when they haven't done it, but you don't know if they haven't done it. So you're saying they knew they haven't done indefinite sentences. So just putting people in jail before they've had a trial or whatever. Yeah, that's dodgy. That's dodgy. Holding them in their house for years upon years. Yeah, I don't agree with that. See, that's why I'll go disagree, because I think there are cases where probably that's the case. I didn't actually know about that. That is pretty dodgy. They don't know how long they'll be under it for. Yeah, that's dodgy. I didn't even know about that. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. Look it up, TPMs. I will do after this. Thank you for letting me know. With this question here about an advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments. People look at it and say, yeah, I agree with that, right? Because that is true. Note that a one-party state doesn't have to have arguments. That doesn't necessarily mean that you support one-party states if you agree with this. However, if you read this question as saying that, then of course you're going to go agree. You're going to think that, yeah, it's a waste of time having these discussions. But no, the discussions shouldn't be avoided. The arguments that delay the progress of a democratic political system are positive, because they give people a clear picture of what the best party is for their lives, for their interests. So I strongly disagree. I think the arguments that delay progress is worded in a negative sense. So it's sort of a leading question. But arguments that delay progress are good. They are good. You don't want people just voting to get it done more efficiently without knowledge on the parties. They get reviewed every 2 years, but they're still indefinite sentences. TPIMs are like a better version of control orders. Yeah. I'll look more into it after this. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. See, this is kind of what we've been saying. I disagree. I think wrongdoers need to be worried, but I think it's not irrational for somebody to be worried about it. Another reason to hate on Tony Blair if Iraq wasn't enough. Yeah, I'm not in favor of most of the things he was doing on surveillance and stuff, especially now that you've told me that. Yeah, I've in my opinion on Tony Blair very clear. I've made a long video on it. It's quite nuanced. I can't be asked to go into it now, but yeah, I wouldn't say I hate him. I wouldn't say I love him. I wouldn't say I like him. I wouldn't say he was a good guy. I wouldn't say he was a bad guy. But you could definitely make a case that he was. Yeah, he was a very polarizing individual and politician. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious of crimes. I used to go agree, but I don't agree with it anymore. I'll go disagree. His home policy was good. His foreign policy was woeful. Yeah, that's a fair analysis. I'd probably go along those lines as well. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. See, when you phrase like that, it's very like, or you just have people above puppeteering the people at the bottom and whatever. But no, I'm not an anarchist. I do think we need a government. I do think we need authority to enforce the law. And to, one must always, agree. I didn't take that as government, IMO. Nah, but I do take that as government, I think, because it's talking about society. It's not talking about a workplace. You don't see government as above us. I don't see how you couldn't, because it doesn't necessarily say above you. It just says people above. Okay, no, it does say above, to be fair. Above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. Yeah, but you do have to obey what the government says. They do have to obey it themselves. So I guess, all right, let me put it like this. The government itself as an entity may not be above you, but the impacts they have with their policy is. So their laws, the consensus they create in society is above everybody. So you do need an entity above. It doesn't necessarily have to be the government. So I'm going to go agree. Pluralism is how it should be. What's pluralism? I've heard that term before. In an ideal society, it should be a societal consensus on what is law. Yeah, I agree. And I think a democratic society, for now, is what leads us close to that. I think an anarchist society is too vague. It's too subjective. People have different opinions on what's right and what's wrong, and they'll just enact that out. Pluralism is where everyone can take part in democracy. So what's different to what we have now in pluralism? Sorry. Abstract art doesn't represent anything. Shouldn't be considered art at all. Strongly disagree. Because it doesn't matter. Art doesn't inherently have any meaning. Just take it at face value. It's about the intent behind it. It's about the meaning of it that people interpret. And right now we're in elitism. We're somehow more influenced than others. Okay. Yeah. Pluralism, elitism. Yeah, but like I said, you kind of need elites. Like, you don't need elites that are oppressing you, but you do need elites, even in a pluralist society, that do enforce law that is chosen by the people. Regular people don't have the same power in democracy as rich people. Yeah, for sure. I do agree with that, and that is a bad thing. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Disagree. They're both important, but rehabilitation is more important. It is a waste of time to try and rehabilitate some criminals. I don't think it's some criminals, yeah. Some criminals are just tapped. I think our government should be more devolved powers like workers' councils. I think devolution is a good thing for the most part. So I would probably agree with you. Rosa Luxemburg's ideas. You're going to have to educate me on Rosa Luxemburg. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Strongly disagree. I mean, there wouldn't be the writing or the art without the writer or the artist. The manufacturer pieced it together to distribute it, but they didn't create anything. Mothers may have carers, but their first day... Actually, I'll go disagree, because they are more important to distribute it, sure, but they're not more important to actually society. I'll send you a couple of links. Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Mothers may have carers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Strongly disagree. You could flip this question around, and I would also say strongly disagree, because it's up to them. It's up to a mother whether their first duty in their life is to be a homemaker or to have a career, and their career should be their priority. It's up to them. So I strongly disagree with it either round. I don't care if a mother wants to prioritize their child or their domestic life than their career. I don't care. I think a mother can have a freer life if they prioritize their careers and their individual experience than someone else. But that's just my opinion. I think they should be allowed to choose. Almost all politicians promise economic growth, but we should heed the warnings of climate science that growth is detrimental to our efforts to curb global warming. Does heed mean that we should listen to it? I've never heard the word heed before, but I would say agree if that's what that means. We should heed the warnings of climate science. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Strongly disagree. Strongly disagree. I don't think maturity is defined on who you listen to. I think maturity is defined on how you interpret what you are told to do and how you respond to that. Do you know this Low person? Not personally, no. But we are mutuals. And I've watched a lot of her videos. She makes good videos. You should follow her. Astrology accurately explains many things. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say strongly disagree in my opinion, but I'm not very educated on astrology. You cannot be moral without being religious. Again, strongly disagree. This is just nonsense. Because humans suddenly decided that you can't be morals without being religious, like a couple 100,000 years ago, a couple thousand years ago. That doesn't mean anything. I don't think morality is necessarily objective, but I do think morality exists in a certain sense for each individual. So you can be moral without being religious, yes. She's very politically up to date. Yeah, she is. She's at uni. She's doing, like she said, sociology and politics, something like that. I do at a degree level, so I do have to keep up. I can imagine. I aspire to be like that. I need to start reading things more and listening to things more to learn more. That's why I'm starting to do this, so I can actually talk to you lot, and you lot can teach me. Being honest, mate, I would agree with that statement. Which statement? You cannot be moral without being religious. Why do you disagree with the religious one? Because I'm not religious, and I don't think that my religiosity or my agnosticism makes me immoral or makes me, moralless. Because I think morals are quite subjective, not very subjective, but they can be subjective, individual on individual. And I don't think that somebody being religious suddenly gives a moral code, because an objective moral code, because there's people within religions that have very moral codes. So there's people within Christianity that are more fundamentalist and more conservative and believe that to be objective morality. But there's people who interpret the Bible to be more progressive and to be more accepting of liberalism. So morality is not confined to religion. Most religious people are I wouldn't agree with that. I would not agree with that. That's an interesting take. A person may not have had morals, may not have had morals, may become religious and gain morals. Sure, yeah, but I don't think that means that somebody can't do the opposite. Somebody didn't have morals as a religious person, and then becomes a-religious, and gains morals. I mean, it just depends on the person. I don't think that's an objective point. You can know what's right or wrong without being religious. Exactly. It's kind of like this. In prehistoric times, before we could speak to each other and discuss and interpret things in complex forms, if I punched you in the face, yeah, that would hurt. You would feel a sense of injustice. Why has this happened? Why am I feeling this pain? I haven't done anything to deserve this pain. You would therefore go about your life thinking, I don't want to inflict this pain onto other people because I know how it feels myself. So I want to avoid putting other people in that situation. That is not morality that's been necessarily coded by anything. It's just our evolutionary existence and the reality that we have pain receptors, and we can acknowledge pain that we experience. Hence, we can also acknowledge when other people experience pain. So you do not have to be religious to be moral. Yeah, that's why I didn't say strongly agree, because there's exceptions. I mean, yeah, if you're religious and you believe that, I don't blame you. Like, you could argue that could lead to that person punching, as he may think someone done it to me. Yeah, no, but that's another reason as to why morality isn't confined to anything. I could be punched and then choose to not punch because of that, because I know how it feels. Or I could be punched and I could punch in retaliation because I believe that's what's moral. I believe that if I'm done unjustly, I therefore have a right to do that person unjustly as well. It just depends. I don't think there's necessarily a strict code. I think there's a rough code that we should go by, but I don't think that religion somehow gives us this idea. Because if religion gave objective morality, religious societies should be hegemonically coherent and compatible morally. And I see religious people with different morals all the time. I've not studied religions before, so I might not be the most educated. I have not studied religions, but I'm just talking about what I've seen myself in society. And in religious societies, in non-religious societies, I don't see it differing much at all. I see people in more secular societies being moral, being immoral, and I see the same in religious societies. Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. I think charity is good, of course. I don't think it's a better social security form because you rely on people to do things out of choice. I'll go disagree, but I think charity is maybe better, but not better as a replacement. So then how can you say religion doesn't breed morality if you haven't studied religions? That's not a good argument, because I don't need to be an expert on religion to myself give an experience as somebody who's not religious as to why I don't need to be religious to have morality. I don't need to know the ins and outs. That's like somebody who is religious and I'm telling them you can't say this and that because you haven't studied agnosticism or atheism. I don't need to be well versed in the Bible to know whether the morality said in the Bible is objective or not. Because I've seen people who are well versed in the Bible who do have subjective understandings and different understandings of those teachings. Some people are naturally unlucky. Yes, unfortunately. Unfortunately true. Some people are just naturally unlucky. And it sucks. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. Again, I disagree. I don't think it's important. I don't care. I do care. I think you should be taught about religion, but I don't think a child should be instilled or should be injected with religious values. They should just be. I don't think they should be injected with any values. You know, maybe the be kind to one another, and obviously to treat people how they want to be treated, the basic stuff. But I think you should just give them the education, give them the facts about religions and things in society, and then let them, as they develop cognitively, to choose which one they want to confine with. Swella just joined Reform. Yeah, a couple hours ago. We were actually talking about it on this live earlier when I first started. I've literally got the tab open right here. It's not shocking at all to me, but I mean, it was going to happen at some point. Yeah, but being taught religion in school is the basic stuff. They don't make you go to church and that. Yeah, I know, but this question is saying you should be instilled with religious values. So not that you should be taught religion, but that you should be actually taught religious values, and not just taught, but instilled with religious values. So that connotes that you should be taking in religious values. So I don't agree with that. I just got the notification, yeah. It's going to do more damage than good, that. I don't see why any Reform supporter would enjoy having Suella Braverman on the roster. Yeah, I think you should. You think you should have religious values instilled? That's fair. If that's your opinion, that's fine. I don't discriminate with other people because they disagree with me. I think that's fair. I just disagree. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Usually immoral. So it's not asking me if it's always immoral or if it's never immoral. Usually immoral. No, I don't care. I don't think it is. I think it's positive for young people to be instilled with some key moral values. Why not? Yeah, but like I said, treat people kind, treat people how you want to be treated. That's good for young people to be instilled with. But that doesn't have to be confined to religion, because then they can go down rabbit holes and stay in echo chambers. That don't let them see other things. Because religions claim a monopoly of truth where you can't go out of that monopoly of truth because your religion tells you that that's a sin and that's not right, and everyone else is telling lies. So whilst yes, Christianity might teach you to be kind, you don't have to associate that with Christianity. It could help vulnerable school children understand themselves more. It could, but it also could hurt them in the long run. Yes, this is the political compass test. I'm almost finished with it. Um, but it's been a good one. I'm probably going to go live tomorrow or the day after to do the 8 values test, which is a more nuanced, I guess, and a more in-depth quiz. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Strongly agree. They should not be excluded from that. They should not be excluded. Not true, bro. You're too deep in it. As a kid, you just understand what you're taught. 95% of people in my... Yeah, the character limit is not great on this. You can only write about 4 words. School didn't actually give a toss about religion, but definitely beneficial. I like how you don't agree with people of contrasting opinions. I like how you don't agree with people with contrasting opinions. What do you mean? I don't agree with people who disagree with me. That's kind of the whole point, isn't it? If we have different opinions, I'm going to disagree with you. Oh, you don't argue. Oh, I appreciate that. No, because that's the thing. We can have a debate. It'll never be an argument. I'll never like tell you you're an idiot for disagreeing with me, unless it's something on like something so basic. I would never see you as a worse person than me. Like, I just acknowledge that we've had different lives and different experiences, so you're gonna have a different opinion. That's just normal. Yeah, okay, let's carry on. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. I think there's a lot of harms to the industry. I will say that. But I think I also just think I'm not authoritarian enough to start banning things that aren't directly hurting people. If they're indirectly hurting people, you just need to regulate it more and you need to heavily de-incentivize it. But I'm not going to make it illegal. Too many people get angry when you have a political argument with someone. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. If you get into an argument with somebody just about... That's why I can get into an argument with a reform supporter on immigration because they're just denying reality sometimes. But I won't get into an argument with a Tory or with a Lib Dem or the Green Party or the Labour, because it's just we agree fundamentally on what's right and wrong. We just disagree on how we get there. So that I won't never hold that against you. Have you ever watched the show Law and Order? I have not. I'm not really a show type of guy. I can't lie. I don't have the attention span for that. That's probably on me. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Yes, for the most part, it's no business of the state, but also like if something fucked up has gone on in there, what's the website? You're actually right. I should have linked it. It's just called The Political Compass. Search it up. It's a good quiz you should do. And yeah, it's The Political Compass. I should have linked it. That's my bad. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults, no business of the state? Yeah, the thing is, until somebody gets killed in a bedroom, somebody gets assaulted. You know, I don't even think I can go to certain terms on this live. I might get banned or something. But I disagree. I think for the most part, yes, it's no business of the state. But if a crime has occurred within a bedroom, it should not just be passed off as family intimacy and privacy. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Strongest disagree of my life. Like, well, they're going to feel it unnaturally. Why would somebody force themselves to be of a certain sexuality? It makes no sense. Makes no sense. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. I don't think it has. I don't see my life getting infringed by people who want to just talk about what they're doing in the bedroom all the time. I don't think it has. All right, that's the quiz done. Let's have some predictions of where I land. Wait, let me just get this up. Some of you lot, there's not many people in this live, but those of you who have been watching for a while, where do you think I'm going to be on this spectrum? I can't really... Okay, can you not see the mouse? Yeah, you can see the mouse. Okay, so the last time I did this, I was around here. I was like the middle green. I did that like 5 months ago. The first time I did it, I was like here. I reckon this time I'm going to be around the same. Between blue and purple, what, you think I'm going to be here? No, bro. Top right green, I agree. I think I'm going to be like here. Maybe slightly more middle green. Blue and purple, bro. I think you've got it mixed up. That's right wing. I have not answered this question in the right wing way. I think I'm going to be slap bang middle of the green. Me personally, but let's see. It's going to be good. Center, authoritarian, left. So Aiden thinks I'm going to be here. I don't think I will. Or center. And Low thinks I'm going to be like here. Okay. Interesting. Get out of it. All right. Bro, as soon as I'm about to see the result, I got 10 people in it. I had like 3 people watching this live for like the whole entire time. And now suddenly people have joined when I finished. Fair enough. I mean, you lot are here for the good part, I guess. All right. I find it so funny how they just put people on the extremes. They put nobody here for these countries. Okay. Oh wow. Fairs. That's actually way more left than I thought it was gonna be. That's more left than I got last time. Look, they say as you get older, you get progressively more right wing. I've been getting progressively more left wing. That's interesting. Too woke for all that. Hey, what's wrong with being woke, bro? What's the best category to be in? Objectively, I think the best category to be in is the green category. I just think that's just basically, if you're in the green, you don't care about what people do with their lives as long as it's not hurting anyone else. And you also think that governments should hold big businesses to account. That is as short and simple as I can put it for you if you're in the green.